breathe purple and gold? Are you ready to hoist the colors? Now, time for the most in-depth look at the world of ECU athletics. Welcome in to Hoist the Colors with your host, Stephen Igo on 94.3 The Game. Watch the show live on Facebook and at 943thegame.com. Now, here's your host, Stephen Igo.
All right, welcome in. Hoist the Colors on a Thursday, January 16th edition of the show. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, and X. Join the show there and get involved with the chat. Obviously, we're always reading your questions, comments, and everything on our live feed. All right, big in-studio guest today. We've got the new strength and conditioning director over at East Carolina. In studio, Mike Sirignano. Mike, how's it going, man?
It's going great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Mike. Obviously, I'm sure things are going 100 miles an hour for you these days, trying to get moved full-time to Greenville and get used to all the new guys you'll be training. So we'll go through your background here in a bit, but let's first start off with how'd you get linked up with East Carolina, Coach Harrell, and end up at East Carolina?
Yeah, so I've heard about ECU and kind of the culture and their community and the fan base for years now. One of my best friends in the industry is Dwayne Ledford, who played back here in the day, worked here in the day, and I worked with him for like 7 years. Then when I went to Atlanta, he was 5 minutes down the road, and we're in contact almost daily. So he told me about the culture. He told me about, Coach Connors. I built a relationship with him. And when the job came open in 2019, we were trying to convince Coach Satterfield to try to get this job, and we eventually went to Louisville. But I've just heard about how it's a special place, right? And for me, building a championship program, the community means so much to that. So I wanted to entrench myself in getting the job. So everyone I know in the industry hit up Coach Blake to the point where he told me he couldn't sleep at night. He was getting so many text messages. So we didn't really know each other, but I just put all my friends and people I know in the industry on him, and that's how it got done.
So how many times did you have to talk to him before you really felt like y'all had that connection? Was it kind of instant, when you sat down with him, talked with him over the phone? When did you kind of feel it was the right fit for you?
Yeah, so I talked to him only probably a couple times prior to my interview, but I felt like I knew who he was because everyone that I've coached with knows him, and they know kind of the cloth he's cut from. So I felt like I knew him, what he wanted, and then he gave me a list of things to talk about during the interview, and I just went ham, so to speak, and he gave me the thumbs up during the interview, and after that I felt pretty good about it, and then I came on campus, and during that it was kind of just a meet and greet, and I felt at that point like I was the guy for the job.
Mike Sirignano, new strength coach at East Carolina. So a bit of an interesting situation. You've obviously come in with, as you mentioned, Scott Satterfield. You were with him. You made the transition to Louisville. You also came in with Sean Elliott at Georgia State later in his tenure. So this situation, Blake Harrell has been at ECU. He's obviously getting promoted to the full-time job after some big success. So how do you feel like your past experiences help shape how you kind of handle this transition as far as diving in head first and everything?
Yeah, so this transition's actually been a little easy for me, just because, one, I've done it a few times now, but secondly, I think the one thing that Coach Blake did for me is he brought me to the bowl game, and I just got to observe. So at that point, I had my own perceptions. My eyes never lie to me, so I could see what has worked for me in the past, how the staff operated, how the players operated, their energy, the way they went about their business, and then got the list of things from Coach Harrell that he wanted changed, and the things that we talked about, the things that I thought needed to be changed. And so it's been pretty smooth to this point. So that's been a little bit different. But as I told the team, is like I always get better in these transitions because I know what I've done wrong in the past, and I don't have me as a man, like I'll go change those things. I'm not going to keep doing the wrong thing over and over again. So having perception of what I've done right and wrong, and seeing the observating, that was very cool and helped me. So on Monday really was Sunday was my first introduction to the team. So I knew what I wanted to talk about, and I knew what to fix right away, and I didn't have to go down the road and be around the guys to see what I had to fix. I kind of knew already, so that's been a tremendous help.
Semester, as you mentioned, started this week on Monday. And so, obviously, kind of walk us through the early schedule of how you're training these guys during winter conditioning. And obviously, the coaches I know are at the convention. Earlier this week they'll be on the road recruiting a lot. So, kind of, what's your goal and your early mindset on how to approach this thing?
So my early mindset is right. We told them about the standards, the new standards. We're gonna slowly kind of implement those every day. And I've told the guys, listen, we got the training wheels on right now. You got to learn me, learn the operation, learn who I am, what I'm about, the feeling in the room. And in about 9 days, we're going to take the training wheels off. And my expectations for you is to learn who I am, what I do, and how I do it, and what we're going to be about as far as strength and condition and the overall standards in the program. And then, in about 9 days, we're going to be full board. And any miscues or any problems, we're fixing those how we've talked about. So right now, it's kind of a learning process of absorbing everything that we got going on new, so we can make the change and move forward and start running with the horses.
As you know, I mean, the head coach, strength coach, got to be aligned in vision and everything. So, how much have you and Blake Carroll talked about that? About what you want to get accomplished versus what he's trying to do with this program, or do you feel that's kind of natural so to speak?
Well, I think he's put a lot of trust in me, and he told me pretty early on, do what you do. He also said, don't kill anyone. So well, I told him, I promise I haven't done that yet, so I won't. But, me and Blake, Coach Blake, we talk every day. And the one thing about Coach Blake that I've never seen in my career, he's so appreciative.
Yeah.
And he's an honest man, and he's there for you. So that's one of the things when you kind of get siloed. And this time of year, you talked about the coaches being at the convention, they're recruiting on the road. I feel like he's there and he's got my back, and I think he knows that I got his back because I'm big with communication. So as far as that aspect goes, it's been awesome.
Pushing players in the weight room is you really have to know them personally. So is that kind of the biggest challenge for you, like trying to figure out what makes because a certain guy may need motivation in a different way as opposed to somebody who doesn't need it that way. So is that the biggest challenge? Kind of learning everybody this early.
I think the biggest challenge is learning everyone's name.
Yeah.
Like these exotic names everyone got right now is the toughest thing. So I'm giving everyone nicknames. So that's the hardest thing for me. As far as to get to know the people, I think that's fairly easy. That's something when I wake up in the morning, I don't just walk, I don't want to be transactional. I want to be transformational. So I'm always stopping. I'm always eating breakfast. I'm always trying to get to as many people as I can every day, putting my hands on them, loving them up. It's not about football. It's about the relationship. It starts with the relationships. It ends with the relationships. We can only be as good as the relationships. So that's easy to me because I like to screw around. I like to joke around. I'm a big kid. I'm 40 years old, but, I'll still wrestle with the guys. I'll still joke around and crack jokes and talk in their language, so to speak. So, but that's like the most rewarding part of my job, right, is the relationships. Like, everyone always asks me about the NFL guys that, those guys, they call me every week, this, that, and the other thing. Those are the things that I really take pride in and really enjoy with this industry.
Mike Sirignano with us, talking about his new role, strength conditioning director at East Carolina. And, Coach, you obviously spent a long time, as you mentioned, under Satterfield at App State. So I'm sure during that time you had familiarity with East Carolina, even though it is on the other side of the state. Just what were your impressions of it? And you've been to other places around the region too. And then coming here, seeing the facilities firsthand, and also experiencing the bowl game. I mean, that was a pretty good first game as a Pirate, I would say. Oh,
absolutely. It was fun. It was probably the first game I've actually got to sit there and be a fan for since probably 2007, 8, or 9. So that was really enjoyable. My kids were there, and my dad came down from Boston, so that was very enjoyable. But, yeah, I've known about East Carolina for a long time. Again, very appealing to me because of the community. I think the culture is built in the community just like we did at App. Up at App on the mountain, it's a roll your sleeves up mentality. It's blue collar. It's get to work. When you're in Boone, you're always a football player. You never really get away from it. And that's the thing that me as a man, me as a coach, I always want to keep everything in the windshield. I never want to look in the rearview mirror. So when these 18, 19-year-old guys can walk out of the facility, and whether they're going to the restaurant or they're going to the post office, they're always an ECU football player. So I think it's very special. And then, the atmosphere here in the community is roll your sleeves up. It's tobacco farmers. It's this, it's blue collar. And, we take on that mentality as a football program. As far as the facilities, unbelievable. The weight room's unbelievable. I got to go over to the tower in the stadium the other day. That's probably one of the better facilities I've seen in my career. And then also, like, I think what everyone needs to understand is I'm not just football. I'm over the whole department. So, like, the baseball facility is phenomenal. The Olympic sports, the basketball is unbelievable. So everyone has a good facility. So we can build a great culture around the athletics department, not just football, not just baseball, so to speak, but, the community, bring them in. And you guys have done such a great job of building the facilities. So the skeleton system's here. We got to get the culture right. We got to get Coach Blake's vision in place and keep the ball rolling, keep everything in the windshield.
How does it go, too, for you assembling, your staff or guys underneath you? Because it's not just you training every single student athlete. That would be impossible. So how does that process kind of work out? Is that a series of hires you have to make, or that whole process?
Yeah. So I got a guy on campus today who's going to be my number one director of applied sciences. I probably can't jump the gun and tell everyone who that is yet because he's not officially hired, but he'll be my number one. So that was my main concern, getting someone in that I've worked with, knows how I operate. If I'm not around, they're going to hold the standards. They're going to do the things I need. Guy that has my back all the time. So I got that person on campus right now. As far as the other staff goes, we shuffled a few things around, but everyone's still there. I know one of the assistant strength coaches, Mike Morris, he actually is taking the head football job over at Hampton. So he's transitioning out, and we're going to move Ashton Farmer over to women's basketball, football, and a couple other sports. So right now we're getting to know each other. They're getting to understand the standards. Me, again, I'm about the people. So we're gonna keep everyone in place. We'll see how it goes down the road. And as long as everything's going good, we're good. If not, we're going to have to educate and then hopefully get them to change a few things. But right now, the people are phenomenal.
And then when you look at, kind of come up with plans for players, are you a guy that tries to, all right, let's say we got an offensive lineman who's a redshirt freshman. He needs to add, 15, 20 pounds ideally over the next year or two. Do you try to come up with specific plans for guys that need development versus guys that are older and maybe have a more established base as far as their development? How do you go about addressing that? And is that kind of a work in progress too, based on how these next few weeks play out?
Yeah, well, that's kind of funny actually. What I told the kids yesterday is we got a long way to go.
Yeah.
On the football field, they're a good football team. They play really hard. Lineman assignment stuff was great, and they were a good football team. They're not very strong. They're not very fast. They're not very big. So it's a needs analysis. We're working through those things now. Will we eventually get to individualized plans? Absolutely. Yeah. We got so many other things that we got to get in place first, so we're kind of generally bucking that into everything. I think right off the bat, we changed the way we eat. We flipped that thing 180, so the kids have enjoyed it the last few days. They're eating more because of it, and that's only going to help us, right? So at the end of the day, my job, I'm going to break down the muscle. We got to build them back up with the nutrition. So we got to make sure we're putting the right things in their bodies. So depending on what they come in, what they come in at is not going to be what they end at. But that's kind of on a needs analysis basis. But it'll be very individualized as we move forward.
Nutrition, man, it's been such a big part, and people just don't realize how important it is. And I think the training table at East Carolina had been a much discussed topic over the years, well before you got here. So it's like that really is. You can do as much training as you want if you don't put the right fuel in your body, man. It doesn't really matter all that much, right?
That's correct. If there's no gasoline in the car won't go nowhere. So, I always kind of analogize it towards a car like you need what? You need oil, electricity, and gasoline, right? So the water is going to be our oil. It's going to lubricate us. We're going to hydrate throughout the day, make sure our muscles aren't sticking. The gasoline is the fuel, so to speak. All right, and our mind is our energy, right? So that's the electricity. So keeping those things all in line in a straight line and make sure we have a plan every single day. Make sure we have everything the players need and the athletic department needs, and then educating on why they're doing it. All right, and then we attack it.
Mike Sirignano in studio. We're going to get a break in. We'll come back. We'll continue on. We'll get more into his background, what got him into strength and conditioning to begin with, and I also want to talk about his stint as an interim head coach as well. I want to break that down during his time at Georgia State. We'll be right back. This is Hoist the Colors.
Climb aboard as we set sail and hoist the colors.
Arr, matey!
Back to the show with Steve and Igo on 94.3 The Game.
All right, welcome back in. Hoist the Colors on a Thursday, January 16th edition of the show. Got Mike Sirignano in studio, ECU Strength and Conditioning Director. Talked about his early days, Coach, at ECU. Let's go back to your early days, getting into strength and conditioning. I was, at one point, an exercise physiology major at ECU, ended up switching to communications, but had a couple years of it. I could never deal with the chemistry side of things. But it always fascinated me, Coach. So when did you kind of know through your time, and I see you were a physical ed major at Bridgewater State in Massachusetts, when did you kind of know you were going to get into this business? Did you always know?
No, I didn't always know, so I didn't even know it was actually an industry. So we didn't have a strength coach. When I got to Bridgewater, I was a criminal justice major, just the simple fact that, you know, I was surrounded by great police officers that put me on the straight and narrow my whole young life. And I got to college, and there was this lady that was in the gym every day, and she looked like she had classes in front of her. So one day I was like, "Excuse me, what do you do?" And she's like, "I'm a teacher, a professor, and a coach." And I was like, "Oh, really?" I'm like, "What are you teaching?" She's like, "Strength and conditioning." I'm like, "That's a major?" And she's like, "Yeah." So, you know, fast forward a few weeks, we got to know her a little bit better. Her name was Dr. Ellen Robertson. At the time, she was the coach for the Olympic weightlifting team for the United States, and she kind of took me under her wing, and I just happened to be really good at picking things up and putting them down, and it kind of worked out from there, and I dove all in on the strength and conditioning industry as far as exercise science and physical education at Bridgewater. And that's kind of where I cut my teeth as a coach. You know, I was the guy that got everyone up in the morning, would go to the dorm room, wake them up, and we all go work out together. So that was kind of my first full-time job. And from there, I opened my own business, believe it or not. Was super lucky that it was next to CVS headquarters in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. So I had a bunch of high-end clients, and, you know, the gym I was working at, I went out of business, so I opened my own gym. And then from there, you know, Bryant University, I heard, was like a mile down the road. So I went over there and talked to Marty Fine, and they were transitioning from Division II to 1AA. They didn't have a strength coach, so I started helping out every day. And so I was like, hey, that's what I got to do. Like, I don't want to train these women and businessmen all day and learn about their marriages and stuff that I don't really care about and politics. So I was like, I'm going to bankroll myself to be a strength coach because I know there wasn't much money in it back then. And sold my business, and then I got the head job at University of Rhode Island. You know, didn't know nothing from nothing. Had 721 athletes, two weight rooms that were 1,500 square foot each, and 8 total racks. So I had to get them all in and out of the weight room every single day, and didn't know what I was doing. Just went from experience. And at that time, I was training to be a world champ power lifter. So I say I was killing dudes, but I was breaking dudes down for sure. I was doing some silly stuff. So.
Did you get much sleep at all during that time?
Absolutely not. I burned the candle from both ends.
Yeah.
So I was living in Providence, Rhode Island, on the street where all the bars and fine restaurants were, and traveling down to Narragansett every day. So it was a great time in my life. It really was the foundation of who I am today. You know, figuring things out, not, you know, doing something wrong, figuring ways to fix it. Not having the prettiest stuff all the time, not having the biggest bankroll all the time, and just finding ways to get things done. But at the end of the day, it taught me about the people. It always been about the people. So from there, I moved on. I went to Elon University with Coach Swepson for 22 days, and Coach Spurrier called me one night at a recruiting function, and he's like, "Hey, you want to coach in the SEC?" And I said, "Hell yeah!" And I, you know, there's a funny story, a brief moment before Coach got off the phone. I was like, "Coach, how do you know who I am?" Because, I mean, that's Coach Spurrier, right?
Right.
And he's like, "Well, I heard you squatted 405 over your head 3 times in college." I was like, "Yes, sir, I did." He's like, "I need a guy on my staff like that." So went down there the next day, 2.5 years there, and I tell people the first time being an assistant in my career, I got to learn from one of the best coaches that ever done it and see what he was doing, and I was just a sponge. I knew the way I wanted to do things in the weight room, so I took everything he was implementing with his staffs and different entities within the organization. And Coach Elliott was the O-line coach. We became really good friends. We're cut from the same cloth, and he introduced me eventually to Scott Satterfield. And I took what I learned at USC from Coach Spurrier and those guys and what I was doing early on at Rhode Island and went up to implemented it, and built a bulletproof locker room. And we went on and were, I think, the third winningest program in the country in a 5-year span with 48 wins and I think 4 conference championships and 4 bowl championships. And then took that model, went over to Louisville, had great success, and then 2 seasons later, it's a business, right? So, and then Coach Elliott had tried to hire me many, many times in his stint at Georgia State, and he eventually called me up and hired me, and we had some good fun flipping that program as well. And they won more games there than they've ever won my first year, so that was great success. And then obviously they named me interim head coach. And then I went on to Rutgers, and now I'm here.
And I don't think it's a coincidence. Pretty much everywhere you've been has had success. I mean, that obviously speaks highly to what you've been able to do off the field and in the weight room. So just being a part of that success, how much has that meant to you? Because obviously you're training guys for different reasons, but ultimately to have success as a team on the field is a big part of it. So to see that play out, how much confidence does that give you coming to ECU, knowing you can help elevate this program as well?
Yeah, I think I've been around the worst, right? And this is not the worst, so
Yeah.
I'm good there. Louisville was the worst team in the country when we took over. So we went from 2-10, and within 1 year we flipped it to 8-4 or whatever our record was, and with the same guys because there was no transfer portal. We were late on a recruiting class. So for me, I always take it day by day. I surrender the outcome. I'm the person that attacks each day, the standards, the excellence, and my motto is the only easy day was yesterday. So I take it one day at a time. I understand where we need to go and how we're going to get there, but I never look more than one day ahead. And that's kind of, I've seen a lot of people in this industry that kind of get in weeks or months and maybe even seasons ahead of themselves, and it just doesn't work that way because every day is different. Every day that young player might be dealing with something different, and so I take it one day at a time and I keep on ticking. But at the end, every morning I look myself in the mirror and I understand what I need to get better at, what I've done good, and keep on bringing perception of where we need to be that day and moving forward.
When you look at, you're one of the few strength coaches that has interim head coach, football coach on your resume. Obviously, Sean Elliott, you mentioned it, great success during that one season. He went back to South Carolina. What was that period of time like where you get the call you're going to be the head football coach, at least for a few weeks?
Yeah, so the only strength coach has been named
Only guy.
head coach.
That's crazy,
so,
man.
What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Just like, what was that period of time like, and how do you, I don't know, do you have to prepare any differently, or were you just kind of yourself during that time?
No, just myself. I'm always myself, right? I mean, the kids have great trust in me. Obviously, administration has trust in me, and Coach Elliott had trust in me. So it was a natural move for the organization. But we had a lot of fun, right? So we had started spring ball. That came to a halt. The toughest thing for me was the staff.
Yeah.
Because they knew they weren't going to be retained. They had about 12 days on their contract. And I said, listen, let's do something that hasn't been done in the transport portal era. Let's make sure none of our kids leave. That's going to mean something to the next staff. That means something to the players. Let's not be transactional. Let's be transformational, right? So that was my plan stepping in. I met with the team the day Charlie Cobb named me interim, and I say, hey, listen, let's not make decisions off emotion. Let's keep doing what we're doing. Yeah, I might not stand in front of you here in a month or two or whatever it is when the new coach comes up here, but the relationship's what matters. The goals are still the same no matter who the head coach is. So I still get chills to the day. I'm getting chills right now talking about it because we had that conversation. It was an honest conversation. No one left that locker room. We all rallied together. We continued with PLP practices. We continued to work ball. We continued to work strength and conditioning. We put it all together for 3 or 4 weeks, I believe. And ultimately, I had it. I could have stayed there, but I made a decision to leave. With the next tenure, it was just better for me in my career. But it was fun. I will say that it was fun, and I can say that at the end of the day, there's never been a strength coach that was named interim head coach until me, and I believe this is true. I'm not 100% that no kid in that locker room within their 30-day time period from transition to new head coach that they left and went in the transfer portal because they trusted in what we did.
Pretty crazy. It's a crazy story, but I'm sure obviously cool experience. There's no doubt. Mike Sirignano in studio, and I do a show now Thursday nights with Steve Logan, former ECU head coach, and we've had the conversation the last few weeks, Coach, about just the culture right now in college football. It's harder than ever to maintain culture because of all the pieces coming and going. So obviously a big piece of being the strength coach is keeping that thing together, as you alluded to. During your time at Georgia State and here at ECU. So what is your take on, culture right now? Can you have true culture with everything, all the moving parts in college football now?
You asked me a few years ago when the transfer portal started, the answer was probably no. Then I navigated it for a few years, and I think my answer, it's yes now. Like, you got guys coming in, especially at this level, right, is you got guys that are hoping to get a better chance. They're hoping the grass is greener, right? So if you gain their trust, you do things the right way, I don't think you have a problem with it. Again, if you're transactional and you're just bringing in a kid and hope that he's a depth piece or this, that, and the other thing, I think, you're going to struggle with it. But like I told the guys on Sunday, what my eyes see, that's what my mouth says. So we're going to do it the way that I think we think it needs to be done. It's going to be very honest. We're going to be visionaries. We're going to have a plan, and we're going to work for it every day. So I think culture is still, for me, it's in the forefront. And I told the team is we will protect the culture at all costs, right? So then how do we protect it? Honest conversation.
All right, we're going to get one more break in. We'll come back and finish up with Mike Sirignano, ECU strength coach, here on Hoist the Colors on a Thursday.
The Pirates play here.
Arr!
This is Hoist the Colors Radio with Stephen Igo.
Yes! That was so good!
On 94.3, The Game.
All right, welcome back in. Fun edition of the show today, Thursday, January 16th. ECU strength coach Mike Sirignano in studio. And I got to say, Coach, you got like the best strength coach voice, like a little raspy. Just like you look like a strength coach. You sound like a strength coach. And I don't know, take me through the life of or a day in the life of you in the weight room. Like, how intense is it? You said you're about to go full throttle here in 9-10 days or so. Mm-hmm. So like, give me that day from your perspective. What's it like?
Well, that day starts at 4 a.m. for me. I wake up, brush my teeth, take a shower, and then I go for about an hour walk, get my mind right. Then I'm in the office at 5:30, prepping my staff, prepping, all the little runners, our nutritionists, this, that, and the other thing, make sure our guys are eating at 6:30. Then we'll start lifts at 7:15. So I'm at the front door waiting on the team, and they walk in that door, it's business, and I'm bringing the juice. I'm slapping them, high five. I'm bumping shoulders. I'm tackling them if I need to. I set the expectations for the day. That's always going to be attitude, effort, right, and then leadership. I go through the workout with the guys. I tell them what's on my mind, whether from the day before, what I thought about when I woke up in the morning on my walk, and we go in attack mode. And that's needs analysis of what I need. I told the team yesterday, you've seen me calm, you've seen me funny, you've seen me pissed off, but you don't want to see me angry, right? So that's what I've told them. So it's a needs analysis of what the room needs. I always tell people I'm a chameleon. Like, I can go any color, any way. I can go funny, I can go mad, I can go bang my head against the wall, this, that, and the other thing. So I always, again, I watch very closely what the room needs, and I have no problem starting over, as the team has found out many times in the last few days. So I think they thought it was going to be a slower process than what it has been. But I tell them that I only tell you once, and I used to be a lot more patient. But when I started coaching my 7-year-old, I started probably coaching when he was 4 or 5, really, in sports, and I realized really quickly that he does what he's told to do the first time, and I understand it's because he doesn't know any better. So these kids know better. So my expectation is once you're told once, you're going to keep doing that. So I can get elevated and intense pretty quickly if that doesn't happen. But it's one for all and all for one. If one guy screws up, they all screw up, because that's what happens on game day. The wrong guy gets a personal foul at the wrong time, or a lineman assignment screwed up, the whole team loses, right? So that's how we attack every day.
You kind of alluded to it earlier, but East Carolina, like generally speaking, its history has always had that chip on the shoulder, kind of overlooked mentality. And you've talked about with your background, some of the places you started at, having to, overcome some things. And I don't know, it just feels like a natural fit there. And it's similar to App State in many ways, as you said, too. Like, part of it is getting that attitude back in some regards. Not that Blake Harrell hasn't already brought it back, which I think he has, but is that kind of how you see it too? Like, we're going to, nobody's going to outwork us because of what we kind of have here, what we have to do here.
Yeah, we're going to carry the edge for sure, and I think Coach Harrell's the tip of the spear there. He's an intense guy. Obviously, he's a guy that carries a lot of gratitude around every day. But he's an intense guy. He's a defensive mentality guy. We're chin over the toes all the time. His motto this year for our culture is going to be let's ride. That ride stands for relentless intensity, discipline, execution, right? So that's kind of going to be our mentality every single day. And then, here's the deal with the kids, right? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? And how are you doing it? That's our mentality every day. What are we doing to get better, right? That's my job, to educate you, create the habits. Why are you doing it, right? It's got to be important to you. You got to have your why every day. All right, family, forget about me. I love you. Love is sacrifice. That's my why, right? But also, why do we lift that bar? Why do we do this certain exercise? Why do we do this certain run? Why is it important to have a schedule every single day? And then the most important is going to be the how. What's your mentality? How you attack it? We got to get that how figured out every day, not just on game day. Because you see what ECU does on game day already. They play their butts off. But now let's elevate that by having that mentality every single day.
We've learned a lot about you as a strength coach. Take us through, your family as well. And we were talking before the show, trying to figure out, moving here, all that sort of stuff, fun stuff. But also a blessing too that you're moving, getting this job. So off the field, if you get any free time, which probably won't come anytime soon, what do you like to do with your family and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I have a 7-year-old son, a 4-year-old daughter, and my wife Carolina. They're the loves of my life, and I do everything I do for them every single day. As far as the transition, it's been a little difficult because I haven't been with them for 7 months. They never moved to New Jersey. They're in Louisville, Kentucky right now, so I am every day doing my job and looking for a house. So I will tell Pirate Nation, if anyone over in the Brook Valley area wants to sell me their house, hit me up. I am not hard to find, right? But, the day in the life is I come home and I'm going to be the best coach I can during those hours, and then I'm going to be the best father I can. And I'm going to do everything my parents did for me and taught me how to be a good son, a good parent. And my goal every day is to be better than my parents were for me. So I know the things I kind of hold animosity towards, coming from a hard-nosed area in Boston, Massachusetts. And my parents worked 2-3 jobs growing up, and not to say they did a bad job when I say this, is I want to be better than they were every day, and I work on that every single day. And I lead with love and sacrifice. So for me, after a day of work, that's taking my son or my daughter to their sporting events or going to play catch or going to the pool, we love to hunt, we love to fish, we love to be on the boat. So that's another big interest for us, and that's why ECU is such a great place for us as well. So that's kind of me, though, laid back, having fun. I'm intense at work. You know, I always tell people at work there's very little gray area. We got to do what we got to do every single day, and then we allow life to leak in our gray area. So whatever path that takes for me after work hours is what we're going to do every day, and just have a smile on our faces and love each other.
Last thing for you, Coach, you obviously are just starting, the kind of the winter conditioning phase, and spring ball will be here before we know it. So what's your biggest goal as a strength coach for these next few months, and as you kind of allow the spring practice time to leak into that time, and then, of course, it'll pick up again with summer conditions. So your biggest goal this offseason as far as establishing what you want to get done?
I want our players to go to places they've never been before and understand they can continue to get there day in and day out. That is my goal. What I've learned pretty quickly in this industry, if you don't take them there, they'll never go there. And I think we have a great foundation with what Coach Harrell has done on the football field here. And I think we can really exemplify that by taking them to places they've never been. So make sure we're doing that the right way, getting them there slowly, but then take them and break down these boundaries. Have a run through the wall mentality. Not listening to soft Freddy on my shoulder telling me to stop because I can't feel my legs or my heartbeat's moving too fast or I can't breathe. But understanding that I can go a little bit further. And every time we go a little bit further. And that's why the only easy day was yesterday. So we're going to take those perceptions. We're going to create a narrative around it. We're going to make sure we do it in a safe manner, but these kids are about to go places they've never been before.
So no soft Freddies.
No soft Freddies.
I love it. Coach, appreciate you taking the time to come to the studio, man. I know you got a lot going on, so it means a lot. And looking forward to working with you these next number of years and looking forward to seeing the guys grow in the weight room, man.
Hell yeah.
Let's
Appreciate it.
Mike Sirignano in studio, new ECU strength coach, director of strength and conditioning over with the Pirates. We'll get a final break in. We'll come back. We'll wrap up the show right after this.
We're live with Stephen Igo on 94.3 The Game.
Hoist the Johnny Roger!
Now, back to Hoist the Colors.
All right, welcome back into the show, Hoist the Colors, on a Thursday, January 16th edition. We just had Mike Sirignano in studio, new strength coach at East Carolina, Philip Pilkington, producing today's show. First off, awesome to get the strength coach in studio. Again, no disrespect to Big John Williams, who I really got along with great, but he was not an interview guy, so it was good to get to know Mike Sirignano, his background, kind of what makes him tick. I mean, your strength coach is such a big part of the culture of the program, and so look, there are going to be a lot of differences in how he does things, as you would expect with any new hire compared to the previous regime. But I thought it was a really insightful interview, and we'll see. We'll see what he does with this program off the field, specifically in terms of growth. Philip, any big takeaways from you from getting to know Mike Sirignano, new strength and conditioning director at ECU?
Well, it was good to know the guy that a lot of the student athletes will actually see first when they step on campus. When you look at the era of the transfer portal and early enrollment, a lot of times when you show up in January, the coaches that maybe recruited you, you don't actually see their face. They're out on the road recruiting. So Coach Sirignano will be the first one that you deal with from a true coach-player relationship, not a recruiter-recruitee relationship. So he's kind of the first face they're going to see in the door. What I liked about him is he's an open book. When you have someone who is going to push you beyond your limit, you want to know who they are and what makes them tick, because I think you can understand why they're doing what they do when they are open with you as to who they are and why they want to push you that way. When someone is over reserved, over quiet, it's easy to kind of think maybe this guy is just a jerk. Maybe he's just trying to, break me. When you meet a guy like Coach Sirignano, who, yes, on air and talking about football, he's that way, but even standing out there when he stepped away here during the break in the hallway, we were just chatting it up with him, man. He's a really genuine guy, and you can tell it in the way he talks about his wife, the way he talks about his kids. the way he talks about his background. And I think he's going to be one of those guys that, yes, he's going to push these young men to the limit, but then he also, when it's time away from football, if they need a friend, he seems like he can be that guy. He is a genuine dude. And, yeah, I don't know exactly what it's going to be like compared to Big John. I've never lifted with Big John. I'm never going to lift with Coach Sirignano.
Never lifted with Big John?
No, and I'm never going to lift with Coach Sirignano, of course. But so as far as he definitely seems to have a little bit of a different philosophy, a little more. You mentioned he sounds like a strength coach. I said he sounds like a drill sergeant. He's very military. I like it. I respect it. Sometimes strength coaches don't need to sound like football coaches. They need to sound like strength coaches, and he very much did. And, I'm excited to see what he does with this program.
I like his background, the places he's been. He kind of touched on it, but he had was handed, had a pretty difficult hand to start with his strength and conditioning tenure. Like, had to learn the hard way. It's not like he started at Alabama as a intern or an assistant strength coach and worked his way up through the SEC. Like, he's been places where you didn't have much of anything, you didn't have any help. So I like the fact that he's seen all levels of it, and he's going to appreciate what he has at East Carolina. And I did think one of the most interesting comments he made, Philip, was he said, all right, ECU, we saw it in the Military Bowl. They're a good football team. I can't remember the exact phrase, but basically he said they looked the part on the field. And he said basically in the weight room right now, they don't look the part. He said they're not fast enough, they're not strong enough, and not big enough. So at least from the eye test, he feels like the Pirates have some work to do. And, part of that, I'm sure, is losing some of the roster they lost. But also, there have been successful players here that didn't necessarily look the part on the field, and a lot of that is due to coaching scheme, fit, all that sort of things. But I do feel like, and again, this is no indictment on the previous strength regime, but there were certain guys that when they came into the program, 6'3", 220. I expected him to be, not grow any as far as height, but be 6'3", 240 in a couple years. Or like if you come into the program at 6'5", 210, I expect you to be 6'5", 230 or pushing 240, if not 250 by your senior year. A lot of those guys have not developed how I thought they would. Maybe they're not those type of players, but it feels like if anybody's going to take them to the next level, Mike Sirignano feels like he does as well. So that will be one of my biggest things watching. Not as much in the spring because you can only make so much of a jump in 2 months, and you can make a jump. But definitely preseason camp, I expect some of these guys to look much different when they take the field.
For sure. We talk about it with non-student athletes, right? The freshman 15, but It happens to the rest of us because we're eating pizza and pigging out in the dining hall and having too many ice creams at West End. But, for them, this is an opportunity where, look, we all worked out in high school, right? You lifted weights 3-4 days a week for 8 semesters because you were required to take weightlifting. And, we all I put on the freshman 15 in high school as well. It's the first time I had touched a weight. But touching a weight in high school is not the same as touching a weight in college. And, yes, these young men do have a different work ethic than your average high school athlete because they're pushing themselves and doing the things away from practice to get better. But still, you've got to put on that freshman 15, that freshman 20. Joey Football mentioned he did it, but, of course, he was a preferred walk-on, to your point. You need your 3- and 4-star recruits bulking up. You see it everywhere else around the country, not just at the football level. You see it at the basketball level where guys truly worry about their nutrition. In high school, man, it's just lift, work out, and eat McDonald's. It doesn't matter. Just eat calories because you can put on weight. Now it's not just eating, it's how you eat. It's what you eat. It's not just working out, it's how you work out. So, I definitely want to see that. Or if they stay the same weight, you want to see them to shred a little bit and then gain a little in muscle. So I definitely think it's going to be a culture shock for these guys. He's a big culture guy. That's why he got the head coach interim job at Georgia Southern for that short time, because he's going to be the type of guy I think who's going to make them lean on each other when times get tough, because times are going to get tough.
No doubt. So really appreciate Mike Sirignano's time on today's program. We got a few minutes left. Let's take a quick look, Philip. We'll dive more into the divisional round of the NFL playoffs tomorrow with Bobby Harvard. But you look at this weekend's slate, and look, the easy headliner, everybody's favorite game is going to be Baltimore-Buffalo. But now we know the rest of the matchups as well. Houston-KC. Again, Houston in that Saturday 4:30 slot, this time on the road against Kansas City. Washington-Detroit. LA at Philly. I know we kind of talked about this earlier this week, but if there was one, I tell you what, there's one of these road teams that you feel like has a chance to upset outside of Baltimore, which may even be the favorite at this point, who would you take if you had to put some money on it?
Yeah, I mean, that game's a pick 'em, right? So
Yeah.
that's the cop-out answer. But I'm going with the Rams, man. Look, when they're healthy, that offense is explosive. They've already beaten the Buffalo Bills. I know that's not who they're playing, but the point is they've proved that they can go out there and beat teams better than them, right? When you think of road teams winning, you think of like how Washington did it the other day. They had to win how young teams win. They had to go out there, grind it out, just not make mistakes. They weren't really on the offensive. They were a little more on the defensive. Well, the Rams, you know what? They can go out there and take it to the Philadelphia Eagles, and if everything falls their way, they can win this game. They don't have to be real reserved and conservative in order to do so.
The Commanders, I think, are my pick, and I just, I don't feel great about it, but I am a little surprised the line's only at 5.5. I thought it would be closer. Actually, I'll tell you what, I'm looking at. It opened at 5.5. It's now up to 9.5. So I guess the betting public is thinking along with me. That is a huge leap. I didn't expect it to be 9.5. I expected more around a touchdown. But I just feel like Washington, it goes one of two ways. I mean, you have nothing to lose. I think Detroit, they used to being the favorite. Maybe some to an extent last year, but now facing an underdog with nothing to lose mentality like Washington. If this game is close at halftime, I think it very well could go Washington's way because that pressure is going to build inside Ford Field. So I don't know. I'm going to pick Detroit. I don't know if I'll pick them to cover the spread, Phillip, but I would not be shocked if the Commanders pull off the upset.
Hey, man, the mind is a powerful thing, and right now this team believes. That's a 12-win football team. I don't think we're maybe, and I'll say I'm a victim to it, maybe not give them the credit they deserve this year. They had a decently tough schedule, and they came out there and they won a lot of football games. They're a good football team.
No doubts. We'll see how it plays out. All right, we are out of time on this Thursday. Again, we'll have Bobby Howard in studio on Friday to make our official picks. There's just a little appetizer for that discussion. Thanks again to Mike Sirignano for hopping in studio. Busy time with the strength and conditioning program. He's just getting his feet under him at East Carolina, but good to get to know him. We'll have him on again down the line as well. We'll be back tomorrow at 12 noon. We'll talk to you then. This has been HTC.
This has been Hoist the Colors with your host, Stephen Igo. Tune in weekdays at noon for all things ECU sports. Get a recap of the show at 943thegame.com, on Twitter, Facebook, or anywhere you get your podcasts. We're back tomorrow with more of Hoist the Colors on 94.3 The Game.